to the Kent Lapp Podcast.
I want you to go deep on the Civil War for us. I do not know. I'm not a history buff here, so I want to hear that. But you just said something that was interesting to me, and it could be one of those things where, like we were just reading that stat there about how California spends more annually on welfare than we listed off. Like how many states we listed off? Like 15, so many states. And that's true that California may spend more than those states combined. But then if you also don't know the population of all those other states,
right,
it might be that they spend more than those other states on welfare for good reasons. Like it sounds like maybe they do spend a little bit too much on welfare, or more than they should, or more than they can afford, or whatever. But also, like, you're only getting part of the story.
Right.
You mentioned something that was interesting to me, which is that back whenever it was, if you were a hobo, you were... What is that? Basically, someone who's just vagabonding, has no job, just kind of living life out. Just
if you were sitting like in the town square on a weekday and you weren't going to job, you could be taken by one of those gangs and just completely lambasted into
like the government.
Yeah.
Like that was a thing. The government would take you. So it wasn't like some rogue gang would come pick you up.
Yeah, I wonder if it was government or it was companies that were like unregulated, people that were like building the railroads and stuff like that. But like. It was the whole like, oh, brother, we're out thou kind of thing, where they they're like on a chain gang.
Okay,
like,
yes.
So they were prison gangs, but they were also just like hobos and stuff.
Okay, interesting. So I was aware of that, but the context that I read it was in a book that I read this summer, the book was about racial inequities, and its point was that we had slavery, and then if you were, a black man who wasn't able to get a job quickly, they would grab you again and put you to work in these gangs.
Right,
okay,
right. That happened too. Yeah.
But it was the case whether you were white or black is now what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't like if you happened to be a black man who couldn't find a job. It was like if you didn't have a job at all.
Yeah, I wonder. I'm sure it was worse on the end of black Americans, but
well, it had to be because they didn't have like that family history of a farm or the family business, like. So
but that was happening everywhere, even in the north.
Everywhere. Yeah,
like as far as like throwing, with all the everyone moving west, that was a lot of that was built by like innocent people or whatever.
Yeah,
that weren't getting paid or.
Okay, Civil War. Let's go on that.
Yeah.
What do you know about the Civil War? Sounds like you know a lot. And just for the record, before we turned on the mics to record, I think I heard you tell Andrew that you got a haircut to like throw back to the Civil War. So you might not, you're saying you don't know a lot, but obviously you know some history here.
Well, my fashion icons, a bit of a hipster would be, Ulysses S. Grant and stuff.
Oh, no. Oh,
but I guess
go.
Haircuts were harder to come by in those days. So, you'd have long hair on the sides and on the top and you kind of combed it back.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. But, I don't know
what is it
a
about
lot.
the Civil War that attracts you or that's interesting to you?
When I was a kid, and your heroes were guys, war fighters, like American war fighters, but I hated the Civil War. I didn't want to learn about it at all because it was this idea of Americans fighting each other, and that made me sick as a little kid. So I was much more attracted to like World War II, really good, the good Americans fighting the evil Nazis. That was easier to swallow. But when I became an adult and like lived more of life, the complexities of life, how so many choices we make are tragedies. The Civil War became so attractive in that way because it's such a great example of why war is so interesting to learn about, because like the worst of humanity and the best of humanity are spilled out onto the battlefield. And it's something that as a human race, we are addicted to war because of that. Like the humanity's greatest sorrows and humanity's greatest joys, the examples of the greatest betrayals and cowardice and the greatest honor and courage are all there in that same moment, more vividly than it would be in any other part of the history. And so Civil War is probably the greatest as an American, but even it has so much people outside of America love it too in that way. And then to know that it's still the problems going on are still part of the culture in some way. And that's very interesting, but I like to talk about the soldiers themselves and like these people that they found a reason to fight and they were trying to find a reason to fight, even after the reasons they enlisted for became a lie or meaningless. And they still found it, like, even after, I think, after the volunteer soldiers in the Union, this is just the Union, it was a 3-year term, had expired. So majority of the Army were volunteer soldiers. They had no military training whatsoever. So there was some of those big fights like in Shiloh, like a majority of those guys had not even seen any combat, had been doing like marching drills. Like there was artillery batteries that hadn't shot a cannon once.
Oh man!
And so that's why it was so savage. It was a bunch of people like us, literally like us, just trying to figure out how to kill human beings in mass numbers. And so after that, a lot of their contracts were expiring at the end of 1863, and which was the so that, and a lot of them had volunteered again after that. And so it's an interesting historical phenomenon, because why would they volunteer to do this again? And they were the best fighters too, because there were some guys that were like these bounty men that were getting paid like thousands of dollars to come fight, and they were terrible soldiers. And the volunteer soldiers were the best, and they found a meaning in that. And the meaning really comes, I think it's every time in a soldier's, a meaning is the purpose itself is the pride and the honor of being a soldier in and of itself. It's the camaraderie that people talk about. I remember there was a soldier diary that he had just left. He had to leave for like 30 days, and he talked about how he missed the camaraderie when he was back home on the farm in peace and safety, and he missed the camaraderie that he had with the people, the men that he was with. So that is so much fun to talk about.
Are you saying that was true for both the North and South soldiers, or particularly the South?
Yeah, that was true on both sides, and so that's why they found so much commonality with each other. Which is so fascinating. A lot of times, like the instant injured soldiers would always work together to try to get to. There's a great story. I think it was in Antietam in Maryland, and there was a big Southern boy that had gotten his eyes shot out, and then there was a federal soldier, a Union soldier, that his legs were incapacitated, so he couldn't move. So the big the blind man put him on his shoulders, and the Union guy navigated them to a Union medic camp. And they once you were a casualty of the war, you're instantly friends, because there's some kind of weird friendship that's there, even though just a moment later you were murdering each other, killing each other in mass. So it's a cool, and they made it there, and they both got cared for there.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, part of that makes sense. I mean, I think there's probably a lot of people that are like, that doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
But when you think about in terms of you're entering the war, whether you're in the North or South, for these reasons, and now you're joining a cause for whatever those reasons are, but now you have joined the cause, and you're going to fight for the cause. And then you have the other side, and they're fighting for their cause, but you're both Americans. And when you're able and you're healthy, you're fighting, and you're fighting for the cause. When you're injured, you can't contribute to the cause anymore. Yeah. And so now you're now it's just me and you, right? I mean, now it's just me and you, and we're both injured. Yeah. We can't contribute to the cause anymore. So what? I don't have a problem with you. So why am I going to slit your throat? You know what I mean?
Or it's just a game, but it's a game with human lives. So when it's a sport in that sense, it's a game. Once the game's over, it's not a big deal anymore. You can hang out. But it's an insanely terrible thing. But your job, you're playing a game. The job is to annihilate the enemy, and that's what they were doing. I think. Two, the coolest part about the Civil War, the positive way, was that it was a unifying force for America. And in some ways it wasn't. We talk about the negative parts and the terrible things, how in Reconstruction, ushering in Jim Crow, and another 100 years of injustice that happened. Terrible, terrible stuff. But one of the amazing things is you had these two different cultures that had never ventured, like the common guy had never ventured to the South, a guy from Pennsylvania or Ohio, and other guys from Alabama had never gone to the North. And then that in this war of actually killing each other, they found themselves amongst each other and learned about each other. And it actually created the nation even more so than it ever had before. And wow, it's an amazing thing to see that. It actually the Civil War is a crossroads of our being. And it was during, unlike any other war, and it was then and it is now. and it's a hell of a crossroads. And I think Shelby Foote said that. He's an author of the Civil War. I remember in Ken Bird's Civil War documentary, he said that. But it's a crossroads of our being, and so it's the heart of America that's there. And so you can never learn it all because it's this ongoing thing. It's this thing that's alive, and the people that died, their stories are kind of still unresolved.